Hi there, this is David Roach, Quantum Economics and Independent Strategy. On the subject of China, the Great Inquisition against corporations, personal wealth, and the hoarding of data by all those private sector companies. We've done 2 videos on this so far because it is extremely important. It is actually a seminal moment for foreign investors who have now got to grapple with the fact that secular risk in Chinese investments has changed. And by secular, I mean it won't change again. It's gone up because of the way that the Chinese political, social, and economic system actually works, but which is now becoming expressed more fully in financial markets, which may involve a financial asset close to you. Now, I will attempt to link the videos we've already done, giving you the background and the analysis of this at the end of this particular video, or podcast as the case may be. But in any case, they're available from the 5th of July and again on the 27th of July on the Quantum Economics David Roach YouTube site and Buzzsprout site. Okay, now, I don't want to belabor what I already have said and lectured you upon, but just to recap, there are a number of elements you want to bear in mind about the shift which is occurring in China. It is not a shift in the way that China is ruled. It is a shift in the way that investments, private companies, and many other aspects of what you can invest in are being regulated by China. But the nature of Chinese government, the nature of the rule of the Communist Party has not shifted. It's just what has changed is how it is applied to you as an investor, a foreign investor, and indeed a domestic Chinese investor. So what has changed? Number one, it is quite clear that the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, will brook no rivalry. It is hegemonic and absolute. So if somebody gets particularly rich or a group of people get particularly rich, they better toe the party line or they will be seen as being an alternative power to the party and will be dealt with. That is the story of Ant, Alibaba, and Jackie Ma. The second point is the data. The accumulation of data, which all businesses do, is now really seen as the property of the state. There are 2 risks which the Chinese government sees there. One is that private sector corporations can accumulate a wealth of data on individuals, which often by itself can be a rival source of power to the Chinese Communist Party, which sees it as its natural born right to accumulate all the data on individuals that it wants, which is pretty well everything, and not to actually farm that out to corporations which are in private hands. That is what happened when you came to the ride-sharing companies like Didi and the temporary employment agencies, which were duly reined in, and their foreign equity listings in the case of Didi severely damaged by the increased regulation imposed by the Chinese government. That was not really about wealth, that was about data. The second reason the Chinese Communist Party is really worried about that data is because, of course, if a Chinese corporation accumulates data and then goes and lists in the United States, the fear is that the data in that corporation will become mined, revealed, or made transparent to US authorities. And that will undermine the ability of the Communist Party, the CCP, to hold a monopoly over that data and to control people accordingly. Now, okay, you may say that's really bad stuff. It is bad stuff, but it's not unique to China. When Donald Trump decided he was going to take on TikTok his efforts subsequently crumbled. What was he actually doing? He was taking TikTok on the grounds that it was accumulating data about US citizens and transferring it to China. But all that is happening here is that the Chinese are afraid that Didi and other corporations will accumulate data on either Chinese citizens or other citizens and transfer it to the United States government by the fact that it's controlled. It will have to be audited, controlled, made transparent under SEC rulings. Now, actually, SEC rulings don't do that, but the view from Beijing is, of course, that all governments do that, and why would the U.S. government not do that? Which, is a view it is hard not to sympathize with, because, after all, I would not say that the US government or any other Western government is as pure as driven snow when it comes to accumulating data on its own citizenry or availing itself of data accumulated on other countries' citizenry. So I just leave you with that particular thought. Now, there has been an interesting development in the inquisitional war on Chinese corporations, and that is the reining in of online education companies, some of whose shares have collapsed in value by up to 90% since January. Now, that is not really about accumulating data on their students, and it's not really about the wealth accumulated in the owners of these companies' hands. It's actually about the fact that the Chinese believe that the cost of education in China is too high, and that is one reason why people are not having enough babies to keep the population growing, or at least stable. So what they have actually done is to become more socialist in their orientation and in the direction of the regulation in which they're imposing on companies. They want to actually reduce the tutorial sessions which these companies sell at the weekend, take pressure off the kids, and above all, take pressure off the finances of parents who have to pay for all this. Now, that being the case, it is clear that the Chinese inquisition on corporate regulation is going into a new direction, which is a more socialist direction, which I certainly am not going to argue with as being right or wrong. I'm just going to register it as being a fact. Now, that orientation will take on a number of additional targets. For example, what are other costs in China which are ridiculously high in terms of the income which an average middle class or lower class income bracket family can earn? Housing comes right top of the list. So the current financial difficulties of Evergrande, which is a massive corporation, which at one point made its owner worth about 40 billion US dollars, the second richest man in China after Jackie Ma, who the party has already dealt with. It made him, really not necessarily a rival power to the Communist Party, because he was always a good guy and towed the line and was even present overlooking the enthusiastic crowds at the 100-year anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, not very far away from President Xi Jinping himself. So it's not about the wealth. It's about the fact that this company is completely illiquid, and there's absolutely no doubt about it that it belongs in bankruptcy, in my view. But what will actually happen? The most likely outcome is that the Chinese government will bail it out, take it over in terms of owning it, and then make it into a pole of providing social housing at reasonable cost. Now, of course, I'm not saying that will be done efficiently as a state-owned enterprise, which Evergrande will probably become when it's bailed out. I'm not saying it will satisfy all the needs, but it will be a consistent step in the direction in which regulation is going at the moment. If you don't like the way things are being supplied, like housing, then when you get tired of trying to hold the prices down through local market regulations, which is what's been done so far, what you do, you let the biggest provider of it go belly up, and then you take it over and it becomes a socialist provider of housing. So that's an area you want to watch very carefully if you're invested in property in China. The last area I'll raise is the question of healthcare. As you know, the provision for old age in China from the state is still very modest. The population is getting older, like many other populations at a rate of knots. And as you get older, it becomes more expensive from a healthcare point of view to keep you alive. But China is, of course, in that stage of demographics. So healthcare costs, which are in a great part provided for by the private sector, in particular through online healthcare, which gives you the ability through the mega kind of corporations like Alibaba and Tencent to talk to doctors in one way or another, or to access healthcare online. These are two things. They are a huge storage of data on individuals, and they are extremely expensive. Plus, of course, you can add the fact that the owners of these corporations are incredibly wealthy and have not all been particularly compliant with the supremacy of the Chinese Communist Party. So another area which I think the government can well step into from a regulation point of view is healthcare. But in the end, it can include any area which is accumulating data, such as your electric vehicle, practically any corporation operating in China. And these are all covered by the triumvirate of Chinese law, the latest of which is the DSL, but there's the state security law behind that. And there's a law governing personal data behind that, which gives an overarching range of power to the Chinese authorities to make sure that they can actually keep anything accumulating data, even if you're making widgets in Shenzhen, that all that data actually can be controlled and monopolized within China by the Chinese state, even if you are a foreign company or a Chinese company doing your business abroad. So when you come to making investments, I have now covered the entire ground of what the seismic shift going on in China is. And I would say this is a pivotal moment for foreign investors in Chinese assets. And I'm not saying Chinese investors and foreign investors in Chinese assets will not come back, that markets go down forever, because they don't. What I'm saying is keep your eyes wide open. You have to understand that risk has changed, that a lot of what is going on, particularly when it comes to the more socialist drive in regulations such as education, I believe in the future housing, which is for living in and not for speculation, as has already been made clear by the Chinese Communist Party. And in terms of healthcare, I believe that the emphasis being put on these has moved away from pure data as a motivation for regulation, from pure wealth as an alternative power source of the Communist Party, into an area which actually is very tied up with the fact that President Xi Jinping has abolished all limits to the number of times he can run in office. But he is renewing a transition to himself in 2022, which will have to be decided by the various meetings of the party in 2021. And that is why there is a pivot towards more socialist policies, because he needs to establish his credentials that he is doing something for society in more than simply an economic sense. So bear that in mind. Thank you for watching. If you like these videos, please subscribe and click like.